Number 5. In 2011, Mark Twitchell was arrested for the abduction, torture, and murder of another man. His motives? He sought to be like his favorite television icon, Dexter Morgan, of the TV series Dexter. In the series, the character is a serial killer vigilante who satiates his own bloodlust by killing heinous criminals who fall through the cracks of the legal system. Plots of the series often focused on the highly intelligent Dexter trying to balance his identity as a normal citizen with his identity as a secret psychopathic killer. Twitchell identified strongly with the character. Just as Dexter is a police consultant by day and a serial killer by night, Twitchell was an aspiring filmmaker by day and an aspiring serial killer by night. But it wasn't only Dexter's dual identities that resonated with Twitchell. Every city needs somebody like Dexter, Twitchell had told a friend. In private writings, he would also praise the character's brilliance, meanwhile discussing his own psychopathic tendencies. He also seemed to regard himself as unusually intelligent, being able to hide his inner psychopath from an unknowing general public. For the murder, Twitchell used a fake dating profile to lure a man to his garage. Once inside, he subdued the man and confined him to a metal table, just as Dexter would do in the TV series. Twitchell then tortured, killed, and dismembered the man. However, Twitchell was not as clever as his television counterpart, and his career as a serial killer was ended after just one killing. But this didn't end his love for Dexter. Reportedly, Twitchell had a flat-screen television installed in his prison cell so that he could get caught up on the episodes of Dexter which he had missed during his trial. Number 4. In 2014, two 12-year-old girls were arrested after attempting to murder their friend. Anissa Weier and Morgan Geyser had lured their friend out into the woods, where they stabbed her 19 times and left her for dead. Upon police interrogations, it was found that the girls stabbed their friend in an attempt to appease Slenderman. Slenderman is a fictional horror character who gained popularity in the internet in the early 2010s, and can be thought of as sort of a modern-day boogeyman. The character is often portrayed as a ghostly monster that preys on children, threatening to harm them in some way unless they commit heinous acts as a sort of sacrifice for him. Unlike monsters such as Bigfoot or aliens, Slenderman was originally written as a purely fictional character. However, some believed he was a real monster. The exact motive for the crime wasn't clear. At times it seems as though they feared Slenderman and may have committed the crime unwittingly as a way to protect their families.
I believe after I said that, she made the comment, some bad people were going to do something, or somebody was going to do something to my family unless I did something bad.
She continued to state throughout the interview that this was necessary. She stated that it was necessary, and when I questioned her most of the time, she would say, that's what Anissa told me. There were some indications during the interview that she was afraid of something that might happen to her family, but she was not very specific on that.
However, they also had drawings of the character throughout their school notebooks. This suggests they may have admired him and been looking to appease him. Another possibility is that they merely used the Slenderman story as an excuse. Some evidence suggests that they may have resented their more popular and outgoing friend and were looking to kill her. What was clear, however, was that both girls suffered with severe mental issues. During police interrogations, they seemed extremely detached, hardly shaken by their crime. Morgan Geyser even danced and sang while waiting in police interrogation. Geyser and Weier pled guilty to murder charges. They were both given sentences in psychiatric hospitals. Number 3. Mark David Chapman is one of the most infamous criminals in history for his killing of worldwide music icon John Lennon. When explaining his motives, Chapman wrote, "It's all in The Catcher in the Rye." The 1951 novel, The Catcher in the Rye, along with its protagonist, Holden Caulfield, was an absolute obsession for Chapman. In his killing of Lennon, he claimed to be carrying out the ideology of the novel, and stated that Holden Caulfield would have killed Lennon. Furthermore, he was so committed to the novel that after shooting Lennon, he didn't bother trying to evade arrest, but rather sat reading the novel while waiting for police. Inside the front of the book, he even had a quote written, which he signed not as himself, but as Holden Caulfield. Chapman claimed to identify with Caulfield's hatred of phoniness. The character often criticized others for not being real enough. Chapman described Lennon as a phony of highest degree, saying that despite statements about helping the poor and trying to bring about peace, Lennon did very little to support these causes. Over the years, Chapman has given different reasons for the assassination, leaving his true motive unclear. At one point he claimed it was God's will, and then later the will of the devil. He also claimed he did it to gain John Lennon's fame, an interesting motive considering his supposed disgust for Lennon's phoniness. One thing Chapman has been consistent about is his love for The Catcher in the Rye. In a 1992 interview, he affirmed that it wasn't the character that motivated him to murder, but rather that Holden Caulfield represented the good in him in opposition to his murderous side. He even went so far as to write a letter apologizing to the novel's author for the bad press. Number 2. In 1996, a 14-year-old boy was arrested for the murder and mutilation of a 7-year-old. The 14-year-old murderer, named Sandy Charles, had lured his victim out into the woods, where he stabbed him repeatedly and smashed his head with a rock. He then proceeded to remove slices of flesh from the child's skin. What could have provoked such a brutal and grotesque crime in a young boy? Apparently, it was an obsession with the 1991 film Warlock. The relatively forgotten film features a male witch, or warlock, who is transported to the future with a mission from Satan to bring about the end of the world. He is eventually stopped and destroyed by the film's heroes, but not before he engages in a few gruesome rituals and killings.
How come you're not there?
Church?
Yeah, it's Sunday.
No witch can set foot on church ground.
You're telling me you're a witch? You ain't no witch. Witches are girls.
Some are men.
Yeah? So where's your broomstick? Witches fly on broomsticks. Didn't you never see The Wizard of Oz?
I need no broomstick to fly.
Yeah? So what do you need?
The film has generally been seen as being corny, over the top, and fantastical, but to Charles, it was very serious. Charles had watched the film over 10 times prior to the murder and sought to become a powerful minion of Satan like the film's villain. In the film, the warlock kills a boy to perform a bizarre ritual. This entails boiling and eating the boy's fat to gain the ability of flight. Like so, Charles had removed slices of his victim's flesh, which were later found preserved in a can in his basement. Not surprisingly, Charles was found to have a deeply distorted mental state. He was ultimately found not guilty by reason of insanity and has spent his imprisonment in mental facilities. Number 1. Jeffrey Dahmer is one of the most infamous serial killers. In less than 15 years, he murdered 17 men. But it was his depravity rather than his kill count that truly made him infamous. Dahmer kept the corpses of his victims and used them for sexual acts, bizarre experiments, and even more bizarre rituals. These interactions with the corpses were in fact the sole motives for the killings. Dahmer desired a partner who could never leave him. He wanted total power in the relationship. Dahmer was heavily inspired by fiction. Prior to hunting for victims, he would watch scenes from his favorite movies to get in the mood to kill. As one might expect, he liked dark and disturbing films. One of his favorites was The Exorcist 3, but one of his main inspirations would actually come from the family-friendly fantasy film Star Wars.
He and I sat together and watched all of the scenes in the film Return of the Jedi that he considered significant. Mr. Dahmer regarded one character in each of those films, a character known as the Emperor in Return of the Jedi, and the character who's obviously supposed to be Satan in Exorcist 3. And what these characters have in common is that they are evil and corrupt and powerful, and both have the ability to use special powers to control others. He describes some sense of using the films to get himself in the proper mood to go out and cruise for a victim, and sometimes he would bring the victim home and watch a portion of a film with them and direct their attention to those scenes too. And so it did play some part in setting the right mood for him for committing these crimes. And he explained that he identified with the characters because he felt that he was thoroughly evil and corrupt, just as those two characters were.
The Emperor is the main villain in the third Star Wars film, Return of the Jedi, and Dahmer strongly identified with the character. In particular, he desired the character's power. The Emperor rules over a galactic empire, is a master manipulator, and is a dark sorcerer with the ability to move objects with his mind, see into the future, and torture people with lightning fired from his hands. He even tried to emulate the character's appearance by wearing yellow contacts. The Emperor may have been appealing to Dahmer in even more subtle ways, however. Despite his power, the Emperor appears as an old man who even uses a cane to walk on occasion. On the outside, Dahmer appeared quiet, unassuming, and polite, so much so that even police hadn't suspected him. In fact, police twice caught him red-handed, yet he manipulated them into believing he was innocent. Similarly, throughout Return of the Jedi, the Emperor consistently manipulates the film's hero and other characters. Most notable is the Emperor's relationship with Darth Vader. Darth Vader, the film's other villain, is unconditionally loyal to the Emperor, even if it means killing his own son. Deep down, Vader hates the Emperor, yet he remains loyal. Essentially, he is mentally enslaved. Perhaps Dahmer wanted this same power over his victims. In the discussion of how media inspires criminal acts, it's remarkable to see how an individual as depraved as Dahmer can find influence even in a family-friendly film such as Star Wars.